Welcome everyone to the Malaria Partners International webinar series and today's event, Rotary's first program of scale, Partners for a Malaria-Free Zambia. Well, thank you again for joining us. My name is Ariel Delaney. I'm the Deputy Director with Malaria Partners International. Our moderator for today's event is going to be Jenny Andrews. Jenny Andrews is the Executive Director of Malaria Partners International. She is a 25-year member of the Rotary Club of Bellevue Breakfast, who's been actively involved in international service since her first trip to Ethiopia and Uganda to vaccinate children against polio. And prior to joining Malaria Partners International, Jenny served as the Director of Global Engagement at PATH, driving healthcare innovation and to improve health and well-being of women and children in more than 70 countries around the world. I'll hand over to Jenny.
Thank you, Ariel. I appreciate that introduction. Good day, and thank you all for joining us for this very special webinar. My name, again, is Jenny Andrews, and I am privileged to serve as the Executive Director of Malaria Partners International. Today, we have Rotarians and guests joining us from many countries around the world, and on behalf of Malaria Partners International, I welcome you all. On March 9th, Rotary International announced the launch of its first program of scale grant, Partners for a Malaria-Free Zambia, a $6 million collaboration among Rotary, World Vision, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to train, equip, and deploy community health workers in Zambia. This program will scale up the already successful malaria elimination work of the Rotary Club of Federal Way, working in Zambia's Copperbelt Province, and it will help reduce malaria by 90% in 2 additional Zambian provinces. Malaria is considered the greatest killer of all times. In 2019 alone, the world experienced 229 million cases of malaria, and over 409,000 people, mostly young children and pregnant women, died of this preventable and treatable disease. 94% of those cases and deaths were in sub-Saharan Africa, where our work takes place. Malaria Partners International is a nonprofit organization founded and run by Rotarians. We are working to ignite an international campaign among Rotarians for the global elimination of malaria. We advocate for support of ending malaria through presentations at Rotary clubs and district conferences throughout the US and Africa. If you are interested in having one of our board members speak to your club, please put that request in the chat or go to our website and ask for a presentation. In addition, we provide funding through our small grants program to Rotary clubs around the world that want to get involved in the fight to end malaria. In Rotary's first programs of scale, Malaria Partners International worked closely with all of the partners, including Rotary International, the Rotary Club of Federal Way, World Vision, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and others, to assess the need, convene the partners, submit the application, and prepare for Rotary's rigorous vetting process. With Partners for a Malaria-Free Zambia launching its first training this coming week, we continue to work closely with all partners to ensure the success of the work. Today, we'll hear from 4 key players in Rotary's first Programs of Scale Award. Victor Barnes will share the goals and desired impact of Rotary's Program of Scale. Sarah Crawford will discuss the key criteria Rotary looks for in Programs of Scale applications. Bill Felt will share the journey of planning and now executing Partners for a Malaria-Free Zambia. And Martha Lungu will highlight how her team created a successful needs assessment and in-country partnerships to foster mobilization. And now I'm pleased to share a little background information on each panelist. Victor Barnes joined Rotary in 2013 as the Director of Programs and Grants and now oversees the Rotary Foundation's district and global grant making. He's also responsible for Rotary Youth programs, service and project partnerships, member engagement, fellowship, and action groups, and programs of scale. Prior to joining Rotary, Victor held senior leadership roles at AIDS United, the Corporate Council on Africa, the Centers for Disease Control, and USAID. Victor received his BA at Washington and Lee University and his MA from the University of California. He completed his PhD coursework at Stanford University's International Development Education Center. Victor is an admirer of contemporary African art, and decades from now, when he's ready for retirement, Victor plans to promote African American artists. Sarah Crawford joined the Rotary team in July of 2020 and oversees programs of scale. Previously, Sarah spent 10 years working with the Millennium Challenge Corporation, initially overseeing private sector development programs in several countries in Central America, Africa, and Asia, and then serving at the U.S. Embassy in El Salvador as the Deputy Resident Country Director, and in Washington, D.C. as the Director of Strategic Partnerships. Sarah holds a BA in Political Science from the University of Illinois and an MA in International Service from American University. Sarah comes by her Rotary roots naturally, as both of her parents are Rotarians, and Sarah was a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholar in Brazil. Bill Felt has been a Rotarian for 33 years, the last 22 of which have been with the Rotary Club of Federal Way. He has served as the primary international sponsor on 9 Rotary grants, including 4 in Zambia, 3 in Bolivia, and 1 each in Namibia and Nicaragua. Bill currently is the lead Rotarian in Rotary's first Programs of Scale Partners for Malaria-Free Zambia. Bill graduated from Carleton College, where he served for 16 years on its Board of Trustees and also served as the president of Carleton's Alumni Association. Bill received his MBA from Harvard University and served with the United States Foreign Service with postings in Germany, Iran, and the State Department in Washington, D.C. Over the last 33 years, when not fully engaged in Rotary projects, Bill also found time to serve in executive positions with Weyerhaeuser Company and was a majority owner and CEO of Floor Metal Fabricators. And finally, Martha Lungu is the executive director of Malaria Partners Zambia. She is a past assistant governor for District 9210 and a member of the Rotary Club of Ndola. Martha has been a Rotarian for over 15 years. She is a chartered accountant and serves on the Rotary Foundation's cadre of technical advisors in auditing. And now it is my pleasure to call on Victor Barnes, who will share Rotary's vision for the Programs of Scale. Over to you, Victor.
Thank you, Jenny. So what I'd like to do is give you a very brief history of Programs of Scale and sort of where they came from, the genesis of the program, because I think it's important to sort of ground it in the history of the organization. And there are 2 fundamental things that have really influenced the development of Programs of Scale. The first was the development of future vision and global grants over the past 10 to 12 years, and the revision of how Rotary did its international grant making. We moved from a very sort of freewheeling way of distributing nearly $100 million a year to one in which we initiated a series of 6 areas of focus, soon to be 7, that provided criteria and structure for Rotarians on how they spent nearly $150 million a year in both global and district grants. And the intent was really to not only focus the work that Rotarians were doing, but to provide sustainability in the work that they were doing, to use community assessments to not only understand the assets and the deficits of the communities they were working in, but also to create real buy-in into those communities so that there was sustainability in the work that was happening. And ultimately, the intent is to begin to see measurement and outcome indicators and ultimately impact indicators in this very large investment that Rotary makes on an annual basis. So that really set the stage for looking at a more intense way of doing grant making, which ultimately resulted in programs of scale. The other critical area that really drove the discussion to look for an alternative grant model is really the pending eradication of polio. And as many of you may know, polio is Rotary's largest corporate investment in grant making, and it's about $150 million a year. It represents a very consolidated effort on the part of Rotarians to eradicate a disease. The assumption is that within a relatively short period of time, that eradication will actually take place. And in order for Rotary to be prepared in the future and to give direction for the foundation in the future, we really needed to begin to think about, well, what does it look like post-polio? What is the kind of work that Rotary can do that would replicate the success that we've seen in programs of scale? So the vision for programs of scale is really to provide Rotarians with the opportunity to do large-scale, high-impact work that attracts not only other implementing partners, but attracts resource partners as well, so that we are beginning to look at how we take what we did in Rotary polio activities and replicate that in other areas, and create an opportunity for Rotary to actually have a product that it can say that it owns and can provide future direction for the foundation. And I think the other critical piece of programs of scale is to provide learnings to the rest of the organization around what it is to have a high impact project, and how that begins to influence the work that Rotarians are doing internationally. Just a really brief history of how we got to where we are. There have been many discussions ongoing for the past 7 or 8 years with senior leadership and external and internal consultants about what Rotary should be doing in the future, and what is the future direction of the foundation. What does that look like? How do you engage Rotarians? What interests Rotarians? What's driving Rotarians? And the trustees really asked, as a result of a grant model evaluation, asked the General Secretary to look at what are the options for moving our program forward. The Secretariat came back, the staff of the Secretariat came back in 2018 with a proposal for programs of scale, which really tried to address all of the needs of the future of the organization in terms of a consolidated focus, a product that would attract both implementing organizations and resourcing organizations, and something that Rotary could claim as an area of expertise that would then be replicable throughout many regions of the world that Rotary continues to invest in. Ultimately, we launched programs of scale, and we'll talk more about that whole process, but we were thrilled with partners from Malaria-Free Zambia because they represented every element of that sort of ideal relationship. It was a program that was highly focused. It was a program that was led by Rotarians. It was a program that was able to garner both implementation partners and resource partners, and it really reflected everything that we wanted in a program of scale. So just in summary, and then before I pass it on to my colleague Sarah to talk more about, the actual process of programs of scale, I just wanted to sort of outline sort of the essence of programs of scale. So we're looking at a longer term investment. Typically a global grant is a 12-month investment. So we're looking at more of a 3 to 5 year investment. It needs to be evidence-based. It needs to be a proven concept, and one in which we can look at the evidence to see that it's been an effective intervention. It needs to be locally relevant and represent not only the needs of the community, but also be invested in the community, both institutionally as well as within the population of those communities. Equally important, it needs to be ready to scale. And for Rotary, scale has a number of different meanings. It can be geographic, it can be population size, but ultimately it needs to be a program that we can take from one community and move to another community and show success across those communities. Theory of change and the linkage between theory of change and the actual elements of the program need to be the guiding force of programs of scale. And most important, it needs to be seen as a program that uses the unique strengths of Rotary and is a Rotary-led program, so that in the future of the foundation, we can say that here are the areas or area in which Rotary feels it can excel and wants to support at a very large scale this kind of investment. I think that we really struck gold with our first winner, and I think you represent everything that we're looking for in a program of scale. And so with that, I'll let Sarah talk in more detail about what that looks like.
Great, thank you, Vic. So I'm going to give a brief overview of what happened during the first round of competition, how we got to today. So Programs of Scale was a two-step competition. We requested proposals, and that request came right before the pandemic hit, but we were able to proceed as we were able and moved to still award the first Programs of Scale in December of 2020. But it shows the resilience both of the teams and the foundation to come together and stay steadfast in their vision and mission to eliminate malaria. So we went from 70 initial proposals and narrowed them down to a top 5. We had full proposals from the following, and I wanted to share this with you all because you can actually see how competitive the process was, and that each area of focus presented an enormously strong proposal, Rotarian-led with strong program partners. Each brought strong co-funding sources. So again, it's a testament both to Rotarians and their action around the world, as well as to this team as being the first awardee. The 3 main areas that we looked at across all of those final award applications were readiness to scale. As Victor said, we're looking to scale. We're looking for both sustainable programs and programs that have opportunities for future scale. We're looking to learn together, not just ask for data's sake, not just ask you to track and put numbers into a system, but that we can learn together of what's working on the ground. You can share that with members and others around the world who care about the same cause, and that you can help the Rotary Foundation understand what is working for Rotarians and scaling so we can prepare for the next future of Rotary. And finally, and most importantly, is that it represents Rotary, both through the good stewardship and trust built in communities and strong financial management, but also the people of action theme needs to play out, that there are Rotarians mobilizing for community action and at the highest levels to advocate for the change that's needed. We were not able to do advanced site visits because of travel restrictions, but we were able to do very comprehensive, and the team can talk about how comprehensive the review was with the Rotary teams, the implementing partners, the co-funders, community members on the ground, the institutions that would be part of the implementation and sustainability plans. And here are some of the quotes that we gathered through the process. Again, these quotes were across the board for any of the applicants, but I think it really speaks again to that testament of represents Rotary well. So again, and finally, the key factors that allowed this program to rise to the top and make a clear decision for the trustees in the first award was that they did employ a systems approach. They really looked at where Rotarians can add value, where implementing partners need to come in, and the right institutions to be working in concert with to make malaria elimination in these two provinces a reality. They have a strong monitoring, evaluation, and learning system, and a curiosity for what is working and a willingness to share what's working and not working with everyone. They have wonderfully strong Rotarians that you are probably really waiting to hear from. And so I'll move on, but what's next? We are looking forward to launching the second Programs of Scale competition in June of this year, but continuing to share from now and moving forward what we are learning on the ground from Partners for Malaria-Free Zambia, as well as future awardees. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And hearing you discuss the Programs of Scale process certainly brings back vivid memories of collaborating with our partners to create that compelling application. And no one was more engaged in that process than our next speaker, Bill Felt, who led this process for the Rotary Club of Federal Way in Washington State. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Bill.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Victor and Sarah. Really, everything we have done begins with the leadership that Rotary International has shown with regard to the eradication of polio. Recognition comes with that, and Martha can nod her head with this. Credibility, it was a real door opener. And looking at the pictures here down under the 2009, you see Bill Gates Sr. with Rotary Club of Seattle's president at the time in 2009. That was Nancy Osborne, and she asked Bill Gates Sr., he was head of the foundation at the time, what international project should we do for our centennial project? And Bill Gates Sr. said, malaria and Zambia. And with that, Nancy and some other Rotarians traveled to Zambia in 2009. And we've established a highly productive and wonderful friendships and quite a long-term relationship with the Zambian Rotarians, including, of course, Martha. And we have been meeting ever since then with the National Malaria Elimination Center and PATH-MASEPA, a global health organization based in Seattle. You will see a picture below and to the right of Bill Gates Sr. and Nancy. And I am the individual with this little hand, a little child, and this is really why we're all so committed, because it is children who are the ones who are the most impacted by this dreaded disease, malaria. The person behind me in that picture is Dr. Mwangala Muyendekwa of the Rotary Club of Kalalushi. And after we did a small bed net distribution project, and we are actually examining the bed nets in the various huts around Kalalushi, he said, "We've got to scale up. This is a great project, but we've got to do more." And having already worked with World Vision on a project in Ghana, we approached them and they agreed, and we went ahead with a much larger scale project. Not 6,500 nets, but 146,000 nets, positively impacting 217,000 people in 2 districts of Zambia. So that was our first effort to scale up. And since then, we have created formal organizations, as Jenny said, Malaria Partners Zambia, Malaria Partners International. The next key event really is the uncovering of the opportunity for community health workers, which the government of Zambia was already scaling up in 2012, 2013. And so we had a very seminal meeting, Zambian Rotarians, Seattle Rotarians, the National Malaria Elimination Center, PATH-MASEPA, World Vision Zambia, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation all met in October in Lusaka, Zambia. We decided that let's go for training of community health workers, and let's try to really build up the momentum for this, because this is providing last kilometer health care for the citizens of Zambia. So it's an intensive training course that these volunteer community health workers participate in, gives them training in training, of course, in COVID protection, but also obviously malaria, and then diarrhea, as well as pneumonia, which are often comorbidities with regard to malaria. The proof of concept is a near elimination in the southern province, and we take that as our goal, our North Star that we're fighting for. And we've already done, or are in the process of doing, 3 large projects. We trained over 1,500 community health workers on the Copperbelt, and Martha has played an integral part in those activities. In anticipation of Rotary's program of scale announcement, and Victor, there were rumors, and so in the fall of 2019, before the announcement, World Vision and the Gates Foundation actually approached Malaria Partners International and said, we would like to partner with you on this. And to us, that was just obviously a real terrific situation. And once again, I will say, reemphasize that polio gave us credibility, because if Rotary can be so successful in polio, Rotary can be successful in other major projects. So we are partnering with them. We and World Vision are co-implementing partners. Each partner is contributing $2 million. And we hope this is a future model, not only in Zambia, but in other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And following the formal announcement, of course, we got to work on our proposal and application. We got great support from, we had a core team of Seattle-based Rotarians and others, Long Beach, Tacoma. We had great support from World Vision and a lot of advice and counsel from the Gates Foundation, which has been active in assisting the training of community health workers in Zambia since 2013. And then post-award, it's been intensive. We have invited Sarah to join us in many of our meetings, and she can attest the fact that we've gone through a lot of issues, and finalizing the work plan, the budget, performance measures. The Zambian Rotarians and the World Vision Zambia folks have been just terrific, as have our partners in Zambia, the National Malaria Elimination Center and PATH-MASEPA. So we are moving ahead, and as Jenny said, on May 3rd, we begin our first 4 training sessions. So by May 16th, we'll train 240 community health workers out of the 2,500 we plan for. After they're seconded to their local health center, by July 1st, we will have protection in the field for 120,000 Zambians, working our way toward 1.3 million. As far as governance is concerned, the Rotary Club of Federal Way is the program lead, with World Vision Zambia providing financial and administrative, including procurement leadership. Myself, I will be the chair. I am chair of the program steering committee. Martha Lungu and World Vision Zambia and Malaria Partners Zambia is chair of the program management committee, and that is really the operating committee, so handling all the day-to-day activities. And so we are in the leadership position in both at both levels, a board of directors, if you will, and at the operating level, the implementing level. It's time to turn it over to our great Martha Lungu, a wonderful Rotarian.
Actually, Bill, if you don't mind, I'm going to hop in here real quickly and thank you so much for your comments. For those of you who don't know Bill, I just want to tell you that Bill is my service above self hero. He has really done an amazing work around the world to make the world a better place through Rotary. So thank you for that, Bill. And our final speaker today is joining us from Muchinga, Zambia, where the first community health worker training begins on this coming week. So we're very fortunate now to hear from my colleague and friend, Martha Lungu, who is leading our boots on the ground work in Zambia. Martha?
Thank you very much, Jenny. And it's good evening here, everyone. Welcome to Zambia. Welcome to Muchinga Province and Mpika, to be specific. Well, malaria is personal for almost all Zambians, because if you're not infected with the disease, you must know someone that is. And having had malaria several times myself, I know how terrible it feels to have it, and it affects you negatively. This is why Zambian Rotarians have been actively involved for over a decade now to help eliminate malaria using several interventions. Malaria Partners Zambia has come on board and partnered with several Rotary clubs in the fight against malaria, forming strong collaborations with National Malaria Elimination Center, Ministry of Health, USAID, that is the President Malaria Initiative, PAMO, the End Malaria Council, where we have a seat, and Churches Health Association of Zambia, that is CHWs, traditional leaders and faith-based leaders. So how we responded to the program of Scale Opportunity was that we, working hand in hand with World Vision, consulted with National Malaria Elimination Center to identify target provinces and districts. And when these were identified, we made sure to go to all the 2 districts, as well as the 2 provinces, as well as the 10 districts of Muchinga and Central Province. So the 10 districts are 6 in Central Province, and namely Luano, Chisamba, Chibombo, Kabwe, Mukushi, and Serenge. Then we have 4 districts in Muchinga Province, which is Kanchibia, Lavushimanda, Mpika, as well as Shuangandu. So we conducted the stakeholder assessment in all these 10 districts, and consulted with the community, the faith leaders, the traditional leadership. And once this was done, we came up with the budget as well as the logical framework. Malaria Partners Zambia, after the grant was awarded, continued working hand in hand with World Vision. And we went back to National Malaria Elimination Center to confirm the project scope and timing. As you may be aware, a lot of things have since changed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Initially, a class was supposed to have 40 people, but now, because of the COVID-19, we are restricted to only 30. And this has really affected the budget. And the other thing that affected the budget was the kwacha depreciation, which gave rise to almost all essential commodities. We then had to revise the work plan and budget. We called for a startup workshop for partners, and a lot of issues were tabled, including the roles and responsibilities, training schedules, the budget, and the project activities. We have since mobilized all the 6 Rotary clubs participating in the project. I can confirm that we will have Rotarians attending all trainings and will lead community meetings to create awareness and malaria prevention activities. Rotarians will be present at all system strengthening activities, working hand in hand with the National Malaria Elimination Center, the provincial and district health officials. So, Partners for a Malaria-Free Zambia, after having had the community health workers trained, equipped, and deployed, we hope to achieve the following. First of all, we seek to dramatically reduce malaria incidence, deaths, and severe cases, because we know that it's because of these severe cases that lead to death. And the cases become severe when the treatment is delayed. So taking the treatment close to the community, I think is one intervention that will achieve a great result. And also through the deployment of community health workers, we'll shift malaria detection and treatment to the communities, freeing up health centers for other health priorities. We will raise Rotary's national profile. We hope to create opportunities for other national or provincial collaborations, not just with Rotary, but other organizations. We expect to have a highly motivated cadre of Zambian Rotarians, and in turn, this will lead or attract new membership, because it's because of these great projects that will attract members to join Rotary. I thank you.
Martha, thank you so much. I know that I speak for everyone involved in this program of SCALE when I say that we could not have a better on-the-ground partner than you. So we appreciate that. I recognize that this has been a whirlwind of information, and I'd like at this point to open it up for questions for our panelists.
Thank you, Jenny. We have quite a few questions. We're going to try and get through as many as possible, but I want to start with this one. How will the news coming out of Burkina Faso about the efficacy of a new malaria vaccine change the fight to end malaria?
So I can comment initially, and then I'll let Bill comment as well. I mean, I think that it's extremely exciting news. It adds a whole new dimension to the toolkit for fighting malaria, and as soon as there is proven efficacy over a scale, I think that becomes a really new tool for anyone who's engaged in malaria to begin to introduce that into their arsenal of how to respond to malaria on a global scale. I don't know if Bill has a different perspective or.
No, I think the community health workers with support from Rotarians are going to be central to the vaccination process. Admittedly, the Oxford University study is only phase 2, right. But once they've completed phase 3 and successfully, as we hope it will be, I think there's a huge role for Rotarians and the very concept of community health workers all over Africa to be the frontline deliverers of the vaccine to Zambians, and primarily we'll focus on unlike COVID, where we focused on the older folks with malaria, we will focus on the 5 and unders.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Martha would be just thrilled if there was this opportunity to lead a Rotary effort in Zambia to vaccinate the young from the disease.
And thank you. We do have a question related to community health workers, and I want to direct that one to Martha. And also to the folks who posed this question. We just did a whole webinar on community health workers, so I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel to check that out. But the question is, how are community health workers supported? Martha, could you speak to that?
Yes, please. Community health workers are volunteers, for starters, and what we do is when they come for training, like they are coming in on Sunday, we provide them with a bit of allowances, transport refund, as well as provide them with enablers. These are a starter pack that will include a bicycle, a cap, a shirt, a phone, and then once in a while, when we call them for meetings and for any particular reason, we will give them a bit of allowance, but they are volunteers in this.
Excellent. The next question says that this club got some very powerful partners to join them. Will the future program of scale grants require Rotary clubs to bring in other funding partners to the table? If so, how should we wait to apply if we haven't already secured a partner?
That's a great question. So because co-funding was not required in the first round, but was positively encouraged. But as you may have seen in the final applications, each of those had presented strong co-funding. It was less about the total dollar amount, but more that others believe in the vision and believe in the power of Rotary to address a problem and want to be a co-investor in addressing that problem with Rotarians. So I would encourage people to secure that co-funding, secure those commitments, even if it's in-kind commitments, but that some level of co-funding or mobilization of funding and partners will be a requirement moving forward.
And Sarah, were large partnerships the original vision?
I'll let Victor.
Yeah, so I think that the original vision was to illustrate that Rotary could attract partners and could attract partners that were complementary to the work that Rotary wanted to do. Rotarians are volunteers, and unlike this group of Rotarians who have expertise in malaria eradication, many Rotarians don't necessarily have expertise in the work that they're trying to do. So it becomes really critical for those partners, for Rotarians to partner with organizations that bring that expertise. It also is critical, as Sarah pointed out, that there be other resources available to Rotarians so that when we talk about a $2 million program over 5 years, the scale of that program is still pretty small. If we can talk about a $6 million program over 3 years, the scale of that program obviously triples. And so to the extent that we encourage Rotarians to reach out for not only implementing partners, but resource partners, becomes critical to the concept of how to move programs of scale forward in a space and time that will allow for fairly rapid growth in the program model.
I have a question for Martha. How many community health workers does Zambia need to cover the country? How big an impact will this project have on Zambia reaching that goal?
Okay, the way the community health worker is structured is that one community health worker is supposed to cater for 500 members of the population. So, frankly speaking, we've not had the census yet, but if you look at the 18 million current population for Zambia, we divide that by 500. And then we know how many community health workers. I think it's close to about 6,000 based on what Ministry of Health requires. But we've still not even done half of what the country currently has. So we still have a long way to go.
Last year, there were about 12,000. With our projects, the 3 global grant projects we have and the programs of scale, we will increase the number of community health workers in Zambia by about 33%. So we are having a huge impact in terms of 4,000 community health workers covering 2 million people.
I have a question for Sarah. Please comment on lessons learned from the first award and what will impact the evaluation process for the second Programs of Scale award.
Sure. One of the lessons learned is we would have loved to have gone out and visited all of these projects. We're looking at ways to be nimble with still travel restrictions on the ground, but we had a really great, and when I talk about who assessed this, it was the Rotary cadre of technical advisors who served as primary assessors. So they are the people who know Rotary projects, know Rotary clubs, know Rotary functioning, understand the areas of focus, understand Rotarians. So we had a mix of cadre and staff doing collective review of each of these projects. So that was a lesson of that collective review, which was fantastic to do. As for revising criteria moving forward beyond the co-funding, I don't see any major revisions, but what we hope to break out and make even more clear is what sustainability looks like and what future scale looks like, as well as what are the core learning questions that the Rotarians have and what do they think they could share with other members in implementation. I think there's a real richness of experience that we want to really share with the membership on what's working and what's not working. So Rotarians around the world aren't repeating what's not working, and they're mobilizing Rotary funds for what does work and what can work, and learning how to localize it to work in their communities.
Questions about how can Rotary clubs be involved from the US and be involved to help this effort? And then also questions about how small Rotary clubs, how is a program of scale achievable for a small Rotary club?
I think Sarah has actually a really good example of how this program has actually spurned a whole new Rotary club, which is an example of how Rotary clubs can coalesce around an issue and form coalitions, if you will, of Rotary clubs to become a more powerful unit. When we looked at some of the other work that we were doing in a different project in the Ivory Coast, one of the things that we looked to was the infrastructure of Polio Plus, and the fact that Polio Plus infrastructure in the Côte d'Ivoire had every month brought every president of Rotary clubs all over Côte d'Ivoire into Abidjan to meet on a monthly basis, and it allowed for those clubs to have this kind of interaction. And if there were a project like this put forward in that environment, you'd be able to mobilize small clubs in a way that created one much larger coordinated effort. And I think that's the kind of synergy that we'd like to see happen with smaller clubs that were really interested in doing this kind of work.
Yeah, I think when we talk about the unique strengths of Rotarians, it's the drive and action, and really using your volunteer hours for the best service to your community and the world. But I think what is part of the power of Rotary is that global network. And so by joining small clubs together, by bringing districts together, by really working with the clubs and district in the place where you want the project to occur. I mean, the power of Martha speaking on the local ownership of this program is just, it's everything. So I think that's how the small clubs can think about not the small, but what's the power of the network that you belong to.
Excellent. It's all about the coalition building. So for Martha and Bill, question to you about what's the impact of COVID on the plan to equip and deploy 2,500 community health workers?
Like Elias alluded to, for starters, the impact has been that it has affected the budget in such that a class has been reduced instead of 40 per class to 30. So meaning there will be more training sessions. And then there's also a huge requirement, that is a huge budget line for providing the community health workers undergoing trainings with protective equipment. That was is a requirement. And basically, we are working hand in hand with Ministry of Health, and we are getting the proper guidance and observing the COVID-19 rules and regulations. So we are working with it.
And there's a danger also, frankly, the community health worker program so far has had very little turnover. But we have had several deaths in some of our project areas due to COVID. And so we hope that it's still fairly minimal, but that is always a risk if the pandemic is not fully controlled in Muchinga and central provinces.
I know Martha and Bill can speak to this more broadly, but it's something that I would invite everyone to think about in all of their programming is COVID-19 has created so many resource constraints, especially on lower income and low middle income countries, and the ministries of health are scrambling around that. And so that's also created a risk around the anti-malarial supply chain getting to the places in most need. And so when we ask this team to think about the critical risks, and any team to think about the critical risks, you have to think about the mitigation techniques and how to make sure it's sustainable. So this team is working through how to ensure a sustainable supply chain for anti-malarials so that the community health workers are equipped with what they need to do.
Thank you, Sarah, and that adaptation will be very important going forward. I'm going to hand back over to Jenny now.
Thank you, Ariel. Unfortunately, we are now at time, so I really want to thank our speakers, Victor, Sarah, Bill, and Martha, and thank all of you who joined today to hear this webinar. Like Ariel said, we will have a recording of the webinar and a transcript available, and we would be more than happy to answer any remaining questions you might have. You can certainly reach out to us, and please visit our website if you're interested in having a speaker come to your club, to either virtually or in person, to present on malaria. We would be thrilled to do that. And with that, I hope that you will all join us in the fight to create a malaria-free world. Thank you all very much.